Court proceedings have wrapped for the owners of a BC ostrich farm. They're appealing a cull order that could see hundreds of birds killed. The farm received the direction after avian flu was detected in dozens of ostriches last winter. It's a story that has attracted the attention of high-ranking Trump administration officials. And the CBC's Hilary Johnstone is watching developments. And Hilary, walk us through this story.
Well, all of this started this past winter in December and January, Andrew, when a number of ostriches on an ostrich farm in British Columbia became ill. Those birds that had died were later tested. They tested positive for avian flu. There was then an order from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to cull the remaining birds in that flock. 69 of them had died. There are some 400 birds in total. So like you say, we're talking about hundreds of birds here. The owners of that farm, called Universal Ostrich Farms, did not want to cull the remaining birds. They said that in their view, the remaining birds were immune to the avian flu and that they had been working with researchers to study that immunity. That is what we'd heard from the farm owners at the time. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, though, has what's called a stamping out order. And because of the concerns over the avian flu, not just in Canada, but around the world, it is often practiced that even if only a few birds in a flock become ill, that you cull all of them so that you do not have the risk that the disease is passed on to even more animals, whether that be birds, other animals, or even in rare cases, humans, because a human did become very, very ill with avian flu in British Columbia back in November. The owners of this farm, though, very upset about this. We heard a little bit earlier on today outside those court proceedings from the daughter of the owners, who talked about how emotional this is, the economic toll that this will take on the family business. Here's a little bit of what we heard.
It is the loss of almost 400 souls that don't deserve to die. They have many more years to live. Our oldest ostrich is 35 years old, and it would be a mass slaughter, and there would be no repairing what the devastation that would bring to our families.
Now, part of the reason the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is so concerned about what has been found on that farm in British Columbia is because it's a strain of the avian flu that has not been seen elsewhere in Canada yet. Highly contagious. Like we say, it could present risks to other animals and possibly even humans, Andrew, which is part of the reason why this cull order was given at the time.
And as we mentioned, this farm is being watched by some high-profile White House supporters. It's gotten a fair bit of attention. Tell us more about that.
A fair bit of attention for sure, because it was picked up by some American radio programs, some online programs as well, some online ecosystems, with people at the time saying that these birds should be saved, partially for research purposes. For example, we heard from RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who of course is President Donald Trump's health secretary, speaking on a radio program a little bit earlier on this year, called that cull order a mistake and said that instead he would like those birds to be brought to the United States to be studied because of these claims that they have immunity. Remember here that RFK Jr. has suggested in the past that farmers should allow avian flu to run through their flocks in order to preserve birds that are immune to it. We've also heard from Dr. Mehmet Oz, who is now the U.S. Administrator for the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, former TV show host, who's actually offered to bring the birds to his own ranch. And just finally here, Andrew, is certainly a story that has piqued interest on all sides, because we've also heard from BC's NDP Premier David Eby, who has said that he would like the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to be more flexible here, to study things on a case-by-case basis, calling out some of those practices and rules. So certainly a story here that has, like we say, piqued a lot of interest, a lot of people watching to see what happens. As for that order, though, from the hearing, the court hearing earlier today, the judges have reserved their decision. There won't be a decision until a later date.
All right, Hilary, thank you.
Thank you.
So for more, let's bring in Jean-Pierre Vaillancourt. He is a professor of veterinary medicine at the Université de Montréal. He also works with the university's research center on swine and poultry infectology. And Jean-Pierre, appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the Federal Court of Appeal, they're reserving its decision, as Hilary was just mentioning, on this BC ostrich cull. What do you make of that?
Well, I feel for them because these are big birds. They're birds that can live a long time. So I can appreciate their situation. At the same time, people need to realize a few things. First of all, CFIA. Canada has signed agreements internationally at the World Organization for Animal Health, and we have procedures that need to be followed. That's the first thing. Second, they looked for exemptions. For example, if this would be a rare breed of ostriches, they might have been able to do something about it, but it's not the case. The other thing is the setup. These birds are outside, and so they're not contained really in terms of exposure risk. So the situation is really unfortunate, but I think it's the Americans, whether it's Mr. Kennedy or Oz, quite frankly, they don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, so Jean-Pierre, I mean, at the end of the day, I think what you're saying is you think that these birds should be culled, all of them.
Well, if the situation, you see, what's happening is that they've been exposed. Mm-hmm. Several have developed immunity. Now, in terms of science, looking at immunity in ostriches, there's no evidence that it will last a long time. They can get reinfected. And these birds are kept outside. There doesn't seem to be a way to contain them because CFIA in the past, for some outbreaks, when the owners could demonstrate that part of their flocks could be contained with separate personnel and follow-up and all that, and they would be inside buildings with total control on the environment, they were able to make an exception. But unfortunately, that's not happening in this case. And even if they test them now and they seem to be negative, they can get re-exposed. We don't know if some of them can be carriers and still carriers, and they may have or may keep exposing other birds on that farm to keep the infection going. None of that is really known. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. And why is that concerning, that they could become reinfected and they could spread this form of avian flu?
Well, first of all, this form of avian flu, we have several variants right now of this strain of H5, and it has zoonotic potential. And so we don't want to have that going like what Mr. Kennedy was saying, to just let them get infected and see what happens. We know historically we've been following highly pathogenic avian influenza viruses since 1959, and we know that if you let them move forward without trying to contain them, they will essentially mutate. They will recombinate with other avian viruses and possibly swine viruses, human viruses, and this is not a good situation. Okay, so now the other thing is, until all the sites in Canada have been completely decontaminated, confirmed, cleaned, Canada cannot get its status as influenza free, and that has an impact as far as for some businesses, and it takes a year to get that status back. So that's another problem. It's not just only this particular farm, but the entire poultry industry that is basically on the side could be a bit of collateral damage.
What do you make of, so you mentioned Oz and Kennedy, and you're saying they don't know what they're talking about, so they're on, a certain, in a political sphere in the United States,
yeah.
But that there's an NDP government in the British Columbia, the Premier saying, maybe the CFIA could explore other options rather than just culling the entire flock. What do you make of that argument?
Well, personally, I would be favorable to look at alternatives. Moving these birds all the way to the United States, I don't think that would be wise. But if there would be the funds, because I don't think these people have the funds to do it, but to actually handle the situation much differently, as was mentioned, if they want to study them or contain them, and test them and make sure everything is negative and clean the area. I mean, there's several things that could potentially be done and could be considered. But CFIA's role is to follow basically the agreements that we have signed and to work to try to eliminate this virus as quickly as possible. So what we're talking about, I think, would be interesting. I would be for it, but that's not the role of CFIA per se. Somebody else would have to step in and then try to offer basically a containment and options that CFIA could look at and say, okay, under this, we can bring that back to the World Organization for Animal Health and convince everybody that we've got the situation under control.
Jean-Pierre, interesting to speak to you. Thank you very much. That's Jean-Pierre Vaillancourt.